blast off. Hello, everyone. How are ya?
Hello. Oh, my mic's fucked up.
How are ya?
Lucas Lee Walter. Back at it.
Damn, my headphones are acting a little whack right
Oh, my technical issues as per usual here.
Always on Lee's side. He's either disconnecting or just not connecting with us at all.
Glad you could all join us on this happy Sunday.
now. Fuck it, I'll make it work.
11:21, baby. 1121. The big ol'
The big old
the big ol' 1121 of the 2021, baby.
That's the stuff.
so sick.
That's the stuff.
Yeah, man.
Welcome, folks, to another episode.
So we'll be talking about capital punishment, but before we get into that, another pretty serious topic. How's everyone doing? What's new? Exciting.
A busy weekend.
How we did.
But a good one. Real nice weekend.
That's good. That's very good.
What about you guys?
Was it because you didn't have to see Lucas until now?
That's why it was a good weekend, yeah. I got a little mental break.
Now it's a great weekend. That's just how I do, baby.
That's it.
Have you guys watched? Any of you guys watched The Eternals yet?
No.
No. Have you?
I have not. No, I have not.
Cool.
Yeah, did any of you guys watch Cowboy Bebop, the anime?
No.
It is animated, right?
There is an anime, yeah. Like, it's originally an anime.
Oh, but not the Netflix reboot of it.
No, yeah, so I just stumbled upon that just like an hour ago. I was like, what the hell? They have a live action Cowboy Bebop?
It just came out.
Isn't Harold from Harold and Kumar in it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's Bebop,
So
the main guy.
yeah, when the trailer was playing and Kel was like, there is quite a lot going on in this trailer. It was like
Oh,
hard
really?
to follow like what the concept is or like what it's about, but
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay. The one guy who asks us about an anime that no one else knows about, and he walks away. I think this is where we assume, like, do we guess what we think it's about?
I even saw the trailers and couldn't really tell.
So it's obviously about a guy named Bebop who owns a ranch, and he's the main distributor to McDonald's, right? But eventually there's a lettuce shortage, and then on top of that,
Cowboy.
on top of that, the lettuce was also contaminated, and a worldwide disease came from it called COVID, and it's nuts. It's a documentary.
So you're telling me that this guy who owns a ranch,
Yeah, and he's a cowboy.
this guy who owned a ranch,
Yep,
is farming lettuce?
of course. Yeah.
You know ranches are for cows. And like,
No. Ranch is dressing for lettuce. That's how they make the salad.
I see.
Yeah.
I thought that's the joke he was making, Lee. That I don't know if he missed it or not, or if that was intentional.
Is that your joke of the week, Lucas?
No, that was just us explaining the plot of Cowboy
That
Bebop.
was just straight up.
Yeah,
okay.
I still wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, it looks like they're a bunch of. Are they thieves, or like pirates, or like spaceship pirates? I don't know.
Space Cowboys and the Gangsters of Love.
Maybe.
Wait, so have you seen the anime, Lee?
No, I never watched it. I just
Oh.
it was a very popular anime. I never watched it.
What the hell?
No, yeah, I just thought it was crazy. No, I never watched it.
What the? Okay.
Sorry, did I lead you to believe that? I guess I did.
Yeah, I totally thought you had like seen it and were like a fan. And you're like, oh, now they're the live action.
No. I just knew about it. It's very popular.
I've never really watched any anime.
Except for Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, and not like even all the way through. More like what separates an anime from like a cartoon? Is there specific pieces of it that make it
I guess pretty much all Japanese cartoons are anime. I guess.
like? So
is there a
the
Japanese
question would be
cartoon that's not anime?
no, but does it have to be Japanese to be anime?
Maybe not. Interesting.
Like for example, Big Mouth on Netflix. Why would that not be or be considered an anime?
That's a good question.
Do you want me to look it up while you guys talk about it?
Yeah, look at the.
Yeah, because I don't know what the definition is. Like, I assume there's got to be like some kind of combat. I don't know why, but I feel like most
Having
anime
action?
have like action in it. Is that true?
No,
Or
that's
based
not.
on
No, that's not
anime?
true.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's true.
Okay.
There are a bunch of animes that have zero action.
Okay. A cartoon was used as a model or study for a painting, but is now associated with caricatures for humor and satire. Anime concentrates mostly on life issues or things tied closer to human emotion and has more violent and sexual themes. I guess that makes sense.
Okay, then Big Mouth would then be, I guess, by that definition, an anime because it's very heavily tied to sexual.
Interesting.
And cartoons are generally made to make people laugh and are more comical.
What about a funny anime? Is it both?
Well, but most, I guess, all animes I can think of do go through like human emotion or like growth and stuff like that, where cartoons don't really have that. Like Edda and Eddie, there's zero growth in Edda and Eddie.
That's true. I see your point.
But
There's no character.
and like each episode,
there's no character development.
well, there's not really like a link between episodes.
Okay, fine.
Is that what you said, Lee?
I just said character development. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I had a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucas, your mic is very loud. Actually, Minimac just pointed out to you, but I was gonna comment when it was dead air, but it's like much louder than normal.
Is it now? Hold on.
Like I think I'm deaf actually.
I'm putting it down right now. How's that?
Go again.
How's that?
I think you go a
This
little
guy gives
more.
us such a short tease to how's that? Ow! I can't fucking tell. Yo, one of my fucking headphones is like dead, so I can only hear you guys in one ear, and it's so annoying.
Dude, just can't you do it without your headphones?
I could, but there might be an echo in the mic. No.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Yeah, Minimax says we can still hear Lucas too much. Just turn off your mic.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly. That's
This way.
as we talk through it, I'll let you know if it's too loud.
What y'all drinking today?
She wasn't gonna be watching. How's she chatting?
Okay, there we go. I put it lower. That should be the spot right there.
Boom.
Is she just watching it, not moderating?
Yeah.
If so, we appreciate it, Emma. Any other topics? Do we want to get into the whole? I now forget this kid's name, and we were just talking about him, and I've been talking about
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Everyone's
You
been
want to
talking
touch on
about
that
him.
for a little bit? Sure.
Yeah, a couple minutes. Yeah, and I guess we were talking about like, I guess it's hard for us to really discuss because I don't necessarily those or the laws of those states. For example, they were saying that he was allowed under that age to have that gun because there's like a number of inches long of the weapon that you can own under. It's like 26 inches. I'm like, that's a pretty big fucking weapon.
It's giant,
Yeah, but
To be able to
apparently
hold
he wasn't able because then he got asked why didn't you just have a pistol or something. He's like, it was for some reason it was like illegal for him to have a pistol.
Conceal and carry is illegal.
Yeah, but not AR. It's like,
Yeah,
in what world?
I
I think it's the idea of again concealing and like you can hide a gun, so no one can really anticipate what's gonna go on. But when you have like a rifle in front of you, everyone knows.
They're gonna
okay,
anticipate what the fuck is gonna go on.
Exactly. Like you can't really hide anything you're doing. Like it's pretty.
I
fun.
think-
I think that's a large mind.
I think that opens up very like that precedence from that case is very scary in my opinion, because it's like in that state then, so you can just like openly attend. Do they have to be violent protests for you to openly attend? Like,
Nope.
What is the stipulation that let him just go out with it around? Like,
You're just allowed.
you could just do that.
You could just
Like
walk
to me,
around
that's
with
like mind-boggling that someone can just
crazy, eh?
casually walk through the streets with
That's
like
They actually
AR.
they had protests and stuff. What were they protesting? I forgot what they were protesting, but there was a whole protest
That night, right?
No. It was
Oh.
a different protest where there was literally like hundreds of people, all of them with their rifles. No one doing anything, peacefully protesting, but it's their right. They're allowed to have the guns. And there's like hundreds of people just with rifles in the streets, just
Yo, like to me, that
peacefully
is
protesting.
nuts.
Well,
Like,
even we're in the States, and like people will sometimes just like walk into a subway or their sub, and they have an AR strapped to their back while they're talking about what kind of like
Yeah.
stuff they want or stuff. Like that's insane to me. Where here in Canada, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
up.
like I guess it's because maybe we're exposed to such different, different rules around
Yeah,
that.
gun laws are very different here.
I just think the whole like I'm not necessarily not that it's any less dangerous per se, but I think that you could do far less damage with a pistol than you could with an AR. That's my opinion.
Right, but
Yeah.
as Leo was saying, it's all about concealment because you can go into someone's house and sneak in a pistol. Where if someone knocks on your door with an AR, you know what they have. Someone knocks on your door and they have a pistol concealed. You don't know that they have a weapon on them. And they.
How do you know that? What if I put it in the back of my shirt so you can only tell from behind, but in front it's concealed? And
It's
I just
it's
whoa!
clenched between your butt cheeks. That's how you're holding it.
Yeah, like Tarzan with the ropes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a case against him personally, but
Yeah, and that's what maybe we dive into as like a more broad topic around like gun control one day. If people are interested in that. Maybe that's when we'll have Jacob on because Jacob is very excited to be on our show. But it has. He said his stipulation is it has to be something controversial. I said okay. No
That's
problem.
fine.
But yeah, before we get into capital punishment, Lucas, what's your joke of the week, bud? Oh, what are we drinking too? What we should.
Yeah, so how about what we're drinking first?
I got another lemon life.
Yeah,
There's another one in the fridge too. Yeah, you're getting blurred out. We don't want none of that shit.
Crack canoe.
There's another one in the fridge, so this is probably what I'll be drinking next week too.
I'm drinking vodka 7-Up, but I also I found this in the back of my fridge. I don't know how long it's been there. Don't poke the bear. It's a bear with an eye patch. It's a cider.
That's
Is
sick.
that
That's sick.
right?
And I wonder if there's different flavors. They have different color eye.
True. Or different wounds.
Would you start collecting the different drinks you try and build like a collection of the cans that one day you can show your kids like this is everything I've
Oh yeah,
ever
I'll
drank.
make a Game of Thrones throne, but with cans instead.
Yeah, that'd actually be pretty sick.
That would be kind of cool. That was a neat idea.
I'll just
You
melt
heard it
like
here
the
first,
base
folks.
together.
Once upon a time, I was literally collecting all of the pizza boxes from the pizzas I ate, and I wanted to like build a wall of pizza boxes. I ate a lot of fucking pizza for anyone who doesn't
That's pretty
know.
cool.
No, until one day I found one of those house centipedes in my room. And I was like, okay, pizza boxes, you're fucking out of here. Like, see ya. Not risking it.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty shit.
were you like cleaning out
I
the
didn't
pizza
even
boxes, or did you just eat it?
Yes.
Like
No,
there's still like
man.
crust, there's still
Crumbs and
crust
everything
shit
just
in it?
thrown on the corner. No, I would clean it
Okay.
out, but I guess
Each box has like a used
That
dipping
one.
sauce in it and shit.
Yeah.
Lucas,
Sometimes
Lucas,
there's
you're
still
still
pizza in it.
super loud. Like when we're all when you and Lee are talking, Lee is
throwing
is
it out.
equally mute at that point. 'cause
Perfect.
I can't hear him.
Why are you yelling, man?
Yeah.
You're so angry.
Are you angry? Yeah.
I'm just having a good time.
Yeah. I can't make you quieter. You have to do it
That's
yourself.
fine.
It's
turned
fine.
my
Like you're
mic-
not going to do anything about it.
I know. I just turned my mic volume down and I like, pivoted my mic a little further.
Can you turn down still a little more? It's still
That's
pretty
what I
loud.
feel like I have. There's no difference.
No difference. Like zero.
I think it's fine.
Why don't you sit on the couch behind you? Do the podcast from there.
Yeah. Can you move your chair back a little bit and we'll see how much of a difference it makes.
How is this? Is that good?
It's still like as loud. It just sounds like you're further away.
You just echo
Are you
it. Yeah.
serious? Actually?
Yeah.
Like I'm still loud?
You're still
Yeah.
pretty
My
loud.
mic
You're
the boom arm was like facing towards me. It's literally in the corner of my room. Like I can't even reach the mic right now.
yeah. Like you easily drown Lee out.
Yeah,
I don't
your
know why.
inputs. Your input's crazy.
What did you change? Because this wasn't a problem last week, Lucas.
How's this?
I think it's still the same.
How about now?
Again, you
just-
gotta
it
keep
doesn't- it
talking. You can't just say "How about now?" You gotta.
Sorry,
You gotta
it's
keep
just something
talking.
we're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, it's Emma basically made the point. It sounds like you're yelling when you're talking to us. Which hey, maybe you are. Like I don't know if you're just.
I'll just talk.
passionate.
I'll talk very quietly like this. How's that?
Can you whisper more? Like it's in, like a.
Yeah, I can do that for you guys.
You don't have to be sexy.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Yeah.
You don't have to be sexy. I don't know what you
You
do.
guys like that shit?
Yeah.
Mm.
Can you,
Lee's like,
yeah. Just do it that way. I think that's good.
Yeah,
That'll be an interesting take.
just
on
don't
the
get
pod.
any exciting topics going on, or else I'll get like way too amped up.
You're really bassy too.
Yeah.
That's just my voice, guys. I'm trying to like speak a little lower, but it's
Love
also like
fucking
lowers my
bass.
pitch.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll just deal with it. Let's move
what's
on.
your joke of the week, Lucas?
What did the left leg say to the right leg? Don't talk to the guy in the middle. He's a fucking dick.
God damn it.
That's good.
That's okay. That's alright.
That's not bad.
I think you can even spin that off like 3 different jokes. Right? You could say like, "Don't talk to the guys in the middle. They're nuts, an asshole, and a dick." You know what I mean? You could say like all.
Or he's a pussy.
three.
You could.
he he's a pussy or she's a pussy? Can you say
No.
that? I guess it could be either. It could be either.
Yeah, exactly.
Emma's like, nice. ASMR.
Yeah, it's got those vibes for sure.
Perfect.
That was pretty good. That's all right. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Matt, I hear you have a history lesson for us before we really jump into capital punishment.
Less of a history lesson than very interesting pieces of knowledge around the death penalty. That you know, around the time of the Salem witch hunts, you know, obviously witchcraft or the idea of being a witch, like obviously the crime or the punishment for that was public execution, which was still prevalent obviously up until I'm trying to see here in other places of the world that there's still somewhat of a public execution in, you know, especially in like Iran and Saudi Arabia. But it's interesting to think that like back then, if someone just had the belief that you were a witch, that you could just get killed for that.
Right?
It's like you do something
No
like
due
people
process.
can't explain, and they're like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah,
This guy
no
gotta
due
go.
process, no trial, just that guy did this thing. Fucking
He's out of
done.
here.
See ya.
Kind of scary to think of, like,
But wasn't it also, even if you had just red hair?
yeah, red hair too. Yeah,
Really?
like you were ginge. Yeah, they got rid of you quick.
Yikes.
Yeah, which is kind of scary. But like, what would you say nowadays would be the equivalent of like if someone was able to, like, magicians nowadays would all be dead. like Penn and Teller, they would be, yeah, they'd be out of here.
Yeah, Chris Angel. See ya.
No, what if they're just so good they knew how to disappear out of everything? Like David Blaine would be still alive. Uncatchable.
Correct. There would be like a public witch hunt.
Chris
for
Angel,
David
he would
Blaine.
just mind freak you, and that's it.
Mind
He
freak
starts
you.
floating away, and everyone's like, what the fuck?
So then in another one here is in England, there was the Buggery Act of 1533. And in it, it outlined that you could be hung for sodomy. And for those of you that don't know, anything non-procreative sexual engagement or engaging in like sexual activity with beasts were under that. But
Yeah.
you could be hung for that. I'd be like, yo, most of today's world would be hung if that was still in
So
in
what-
place.
Everybody.
What if they catch you, like, choking yourself with a belt while doing that, and they're like, we can do that better. So they just hang you.
Yo, so interesting story. There was this one time, I forget all the details of the story.
So
but,
Lee was in his room, belt strapped on,
So there's this guy
third notch.
who gets convicted of some crime that warrants the death penalty, and a judge sentences him to be hanged. Okay, cool. So he's talking to his lawyer and shit, and this is a true story. And he's like, "Yo, what the fuck? Like, I didn't do it. Like, I don't want to die. What the hell?" And his lawyer's like, "Yeah, don't worry, I got you." He's like, "Okay." So then the judge passes the sentence. He's like, "What the fuck? We just lost. Like, what?" And he's like, "No, don't worry, I got you." He spends however much time on death row, approaching the day of his death sentence. Keeps visiting with his lawyer keeps visiting him anyways. He's like, "What the fuck, man? Like, I'm gonna die in a week." The guy's like, "No, don't worry, you're good." He's like, "What are you talking about?" Day of, take him to the gallows, and his lawyer's there, and he's like, "Bro, it's now or never." And his lawyer's like, "Don't worry, I got you." Gets up on the stands. They tie the rope around his neck. They pull the rope a little, and his feet leave the ground. And his lawyer says, "Okay, stop, we're done." And they're like, "What?" And they're like, "The judge said he had to be hanged, not till death. So he's been hung, so let him go." And they let him go. They had to be like, "Fuck!" Like, we didn't say hang till
No
death.
way, dude.
Isn't that insane?
Luckily, it wasn't too, like, it was one of those hangings. I don't remember what they called them, but where it was from a height, so that when you fell, your neck broke.
Yes,
Not to
that's
use-
like the drop.
Good thing it wasn't one of those. Imagine that's what he was anticipating, and they saw how high. He's like, oh, he's like, shit.
Yeah, looks like you're fucked, bud.
Wow, that's interesting. I wonder if then they had to clarify the ruling.
I'm pretty sure immediately they're like, "Okay,
So-
guys, like, no more
So you're
fucking
saying
up
that
like
the
this."
lawyer literally found a loophole?
Absolutely,
That's a big brain pun there, bud.
absolutely.
That's sick.
I would not have that much trust in my lawyer.
Yes. Especially that far in the process, they're just like,
Yeah.
God damn.
The day of,
Then
I'd
we
be,
just
like,
like round your
I'd
neck.
be
Some other
roasting
one-
him so hard that eventually he just wouldn't want to help. He's like, you know what? Fuck this guy. I was going to save him anyway.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So in 18th century England, when there were still no police force and stuff, then there were 200 crimes that were considered capital offenses. One of them being if you cut down a cherry tree in an orchard, you could be killed for that.
Fuck
Just
that
like-
shit. That's
I think that should still be valid. That one
Yeah.
in particular.
that's inconsiderate. That's fucked up.
You can't pop people's cherries by cutting down the tree.
Unless it's for procreation, then you're good.
And you're good. Yeah, exactly.
I'll show you these cherries. Hey.
In 1820, there were still about 160. They lowered the list down by 40.
That's good.
And then because of that, this code of crimes at that time was referred to as the Bloody Code. I don't know. I thought England or people from England just said bloody everything. I guess I don't know if it was just a code and then people just interpreted it as the Bloody Code. You know what I mean? But I'm just really not sure. Should I talk about like states and stuff banning it or not yet? Do you want to get into that later?
Maybe that'll be part of your point. Like, if we're gonna get into a debate about this, I imagine that's part of your argument as to being anti capital punishment is that whatever comes of states who've removed it.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, that's fine. We could jump into that.
Sure.
Okay. So I guess before that, do you have a point you want to start with? Because we're gonna kind of go around our thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think, I mean, the way I would approach it is I would break it down into sections, and the first being, of course, do we think it's morally right to kill criminals?
I'd say this is where I'm supposed to be on the side of I'm against capital punishment, but there are and I guess it's where I'm on the fence about it. But this is a scenario where there are some crimes where I think or it could be. I think one point against that is there are some crimes where I don't think death is justice. Like, I think it's far better to let some of these people with the crimes they've committed suffer for the rest of their lives than to just.
Well, I was gonna say, I think for the most part, though, capital punishment has always been labeled as vengeance rather than retribution.
Like, agreed.
Right?
I also agree.
That's how it is. Is that
like a revenge thing?
Yeah, an eye for an eye. It's never been about really strictly I guess justice in a certain form, but like it's not like retribution where it's kind of like, you're seeing someone be made accountable for their actions. It's more like bye.
So are you saying that you wouldn't agree?
I would say I am pro, but in very niche scenarios and very specific ones. Like, I think there would have to be a no doubt that it is the case. I'd also think that, for example, the victim of the crime, they had no other family members tied to him, so that there was no other, like, it wasn't like a family member seeking for justice. It's like you killed off the last family member. There's no other people seeking justice. They only affected this one person, hypothetically, let's say. So it's really, you affected this one family. That's kind of it. And that there was undeniable proof. There's also a, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of factors, basically. But I'm on the side of pro, but very niche. Even Tokyo still has capital punishment, but they exercise it I think, within the whole country. I mean, even one's still a lot in consideration of taking a life, but it's three. 3 annual is their, I guess.
Average,
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let's take this back a little bit because there were a bunch of points made that I would like to touch upon. Okay, so first of all, is it safe to say that we all agree that just black and white morally we're okay with taking the life of certain criminals based on the crimes they've committed? Like we're not against the idea that some crimes warrant death.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think that's yes.
Okay. Now, what you said, Matt, though, so you said some criminals, based on what they've done, deserve to suffer for the rest of their lives instead. Like, you think death is too easy a way out.
Correct. Yes.
Right? So, what quality of life do you think is worse than death? Like, because to me, I'm one of those people who think, like, once you're breathing, like, life over limp almost, right?
Yeah, and that's where it's like,
yeah, the epitome is death, but go on.
Yeah, so this is where I think it's an interesting approach because in like the way it would work in, let's say, Canada, like taxpayers' monies would go to keeping these people alive. And I don't think that's right either. as like it was funny. I was chatting about this with my sister, and the way she would it would be if you could, she had said, crimes like that involve children, murder, and again, like to circle back, there are certain crimes that I think would funnel into as like an option of punishment. There are some that I don't think would be like stealing. I don't think you could steal an amount of money to warrant the death penalty, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in these ones where you're impacting people, children, stuff like that, it would be like they would be like you're thrown or cast away on this island, where you can never leave and you have to survive however you can. But it's not like you have a room to sleep in or food is brought to you. Like,
so so it would be a whole in your ideal world where this option exists. It would be something completely different from like
like this is not like that's where it's like it's not like I don't think it would be like a realistic no. And that's what I mean is like the crimes that this would constitute for or be applicable to are crimes that people wouldn't like. How could you rehabilitate from something like this? You know what I mean?
Right.
But again, this is more of like a perfect world where this is not a scenario that would realistically ever play out. I'm just saying like this is kind of an idea of if it could, like I think this would be the way to do it. But
so
because of the way the world is, I don't think you could keep people alive in a way that how am I trying to say this here? The concept for how you could make them suffer for the rest of their living life could exist, or it could exist as an idea, but I don't think realistically would ever come out to play.
Because we're dancing dangerously close to torture, right?
Yeah, that's
torture
fair.
would be what I would consider worse than death.
Sure. But I'm just saying, is like as far as that being implemented into a legal system, that doesn't seem.
No, I think that's
like a plausible.
Like it's very like it's like going backwards.
Yeah, like
in time, right?
Well,
there's no benefit
you're just
to that.
putting in more resources intentionally to the thing, but
and that's where I'm saying it would be like a Squid Games. Like you're dropped off to this island, but you're not given food. It's like you just got to survive however you can.
So going back a little bit to your point, so you kind of saying that people being incarcerated, let's say, for the rest of their life, do you think it would cost more than the death penalty?
I think so. To keep when you're housing a prisoner.
No, death penalty costs significantly more than incarceration.
Yeah, death penalty costs on average about like $1.2 million, whereas the average life sentence costs somewhere around $750,000.
Yeah,
in the U.S.
Because if you think about it, so for death penalty cases, the pre-trial and trial levels expenses were the most expensive part, 49% of that. The cost of appeals were 29% of the total expense, and incarceration execution costs accounted for the remaining 22%, where incarceration alone doesn't even so in comparison to 1.2 million to 700,000, which is mind-blowing because I was the same way. I'm like, but why is it so expensive? It's not the actual process, it's the appealing in the court system for death penalty.
So
my battle to that would be refining the process more upstream, because it kind of ties into like another point that we'll dig into more later. But
sure,
the death penalty I think would only be applicable if it's like there can't be any doubts about that this person is the person, with all the recent findings about wrongful convictions and stuff. I would say that the process for like the trial and verdict would have to be tweaked how it presently is to get to a stage where you could reduce those costs up front and and bring that cost lower.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure we are going to dig into that, but so I'd like to take a step back again. So we agreed that morally we are fine with killing certain killers, and we've kind of touched upon this now, but let's nail down the details and really build a standard. What crimes do we think would warrant the death penalty?
Can I give an example of a crime that I kind of agreed with?
Sure.
So there's a crime of a girl. I think she was 6 years old. Her family members, aka her direct parents, tortured her, killed her, and had her hung in her closet for days on end, and eventually put her in a hot bath for 3 days of searing hot water, and killed her that way.
How do
they
these
were
people
sentenced.
like?
They were sentenced to death, and I was like, absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
They tortured
Yep.
someone.
Yeah.
They tortured their own kid.
Yeah.
So the reason why they were sentenced to death and the verdict is because there was no other family members tied to him other than those parents. So it's like,
Oh, even still, even if there were.
just end the
Even if there
bloodline,
were,
I
I
guess,
guess.
right? Because what else are they gonna do? But that wasn't like the main point of it. But I'm just saying, like, hearing all those details in a case, I'm like, bro, like,
I think anything to do
That's
with
so
kids in any form would be grounds for that.
Okay, so anything, any crime that happens to a kid, you would say warrants death penalty?
If it's by an adult, if it's other like this is where it gets like yeah, adults for sure. Like other kids, probably like depends the circumstances.
So
just want to say hello to Kempo, by the way. What's up, Kempo?
Yeah, Kempo, what's going on? Let's get uncomfortable and talk about it then. Let's say molestation, death penalty.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I think there would be variables if there's drug relation to it. Was the person on psychotics? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have to kind of know. I would just I want to say like fuck those people, but I mean like still think there's a lot more that's more severe.
I mean, obviously I don't support it, but
the long term impact that will have on that far supersedes, not necessarily, sorry, not supersedes, but in conjunction with the impact of and the trauma of that happening in that moment, as well as the future impact that like events like that can have. I don't know. I think it's hard to defend a case. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
What would be your reason not the death penalty for that?
Again, I don't support that at all. I think that stuff's disgusting. I hate those pedophiles too, but I just don't. Okay, maybe we'll have to take another 3 steps backwards. But the reason I do believe in the death penalty is because I think you're violating the sacred sanctity of life, right? Like once you take life from someone, or just an extreme quality of life, and you diminish that a severe amount, I think that warrants death. But again, in some cases, I think there are some cases where murder maybe doesn't result in death, and that's why I'm trying to nail these things down with you guys. But I think molestation, again, not supporting it. I want to make that super clear, but I don't. I think that's maybe a life in prison kind of thing. But like for you to die for that, I don't know.
I mean, it would be interesting to see the statistics of, how many suicides potentially have resulted from trauma related to molestation in the past.
I'll look it up.
True. Interesting.
Because would you consider that correlated? Like if someone commits suicide because of a trauma like that in their past, would the person initiated that action be in some way accountable for that?
I think they'd be accountable, sure, but like would I think it would hold up in court to then sentence them to death? No, because at the same time, there are plenty of people, some who I know personally, who've gone through some amazing things after that. Like that made them into the boss that they are today. So at the same time, I wouldn't look at whomever molested whoever and say, "Oh, you get credit for them being amazing now." You know what I mean? So like, you did your part, and it was on that person to deal with that shitty situation. As cold as that may sound, but like that's on their shoulders to them and their family and their loved ones. But I mean,
but isn't that unfair? Like, how is that person conducting that act, to kind of go back to what you're saying about diminishing their or the sanction of life and the right to do that? Have they not tampered with that now because they've impacted how the rest of your life or that life will have to play out?
Sure, but then I mean that's why I think there's got to be a threshold somewhere, because at that point any crime really does. Like you said, there's no amount of money you could steal that warrants death penalty. But if someone stole every single penny I had, they fucked my life up.
Do you want to hear the effects of what we're talking about?
Yes.
So, 68 studies of psychologists at the University of Manchester, University of South Wales revealed that suicide attempts were 3 times more likely for people who experienced sexual abuse as a child. 2.5 times more likely for people who experience physical abuse as a child, and 2.5 times more likely for people who experience emotional abuse or neglect as a child.
That's sad.
And then it says something. People who children who have experienced continuous abuse was 5 times more likely. But in this case, what you're saying is someone who had caused, let's say hypothetically, they've done it once, which is still too much.
Yep.
Right. So I don't know. Like it's.
Well, again, like if we're gonna look at that someone pushed someone to the doorstep of suicide, via molestation or some kind of sexual abuse as a kid.
No,
do we do the same thing for bullying?
I was going to just jump into that because then but to the point that does happen now. Like people do get tried for that, right?
Oh, do yes, they do.
Oh. Yeah, like
I meant for the death penalty, but yeah, go on.
No, they get tried as a crime for that. But it's like, that's where it gets very, very, very tough in terms of like drawing a black and white line. Like if this happens, like that's. I think if you didn't have it, let's say on the first offense, if there's a second offense for anything that we just talked about, even the bullying one, the abuse in any form, I think maybe give people one shot. But if it's like a repeat, like, okay, like there's obviously nothing we can do. Like,
so you wouldn't even explore like life imprisonment before death for those ones?
Well, I mean that's a good point too, because realistically, if I'm not vouching for the death penalty, then it would be life imprisonment for stuff like that.
And
which I think should be the case.
What's crazy to me is that I always find life imprisonment bizarre because to me, incarceration, imprisonment is supposed to be rehabilitation, to be rehabbed back into society. Or if the intent is that they're spending the rest of their life in there, it's like, what are we rehabbing them for? I mean, obviously, to be conscious of what they've done wrong and stuff like that, but like if we're not rehabilitating them into society, to me it kind of defeats the purpose of.
Well, maybe there's still hope. Was life is what, 25 years? That's what life in prison.
Yeah, when I say life, I mean like the rest of their living life.
Sure.
Like, I'm not saying
no
the
for
25 year that they have.
Yeah, there are people who get multiple life sentences, right? Like there are people who get like 40 life sentences, so their imprisonment is long past their natural life. Maybe the idea behind that is just it's hope. It's hope that, okay, you've been sentenced to 100 years in prison. We hope to God we could fix you long before that so that we can reintroduce you to the world. But if we can't, you're running this course until you're dead.
No, and I would change it so it's like there's no hope. Like in these scenarios, if they're not getting the death penalty, it would be you're never seeing the light of life outside of here. Like you're here for the rest of your life. So but that's where too. I think like the concept of like being in prison, like you get like. It'd have to be like a real I would believe in like really conditions, like not like a, you've got a nice bed, like maybe not being nice, but you got a bed to sleep in, like you get your meals throughout the day, like those are kind of be like
school prisons.
Yeah, like not even like it's got to be like it's not a good time in there for people like that we're talking about in these specific crimes. It'd be like a separate prison, like that there's like you guys were saying, rehabilitation programs for less serious crimes like theft or things like that, but for you would contest the death penalty for, there should be another type of prison that is so that it's not necessarily like an easy ride for the rest of the time that you're there.
So something that is truly punishment rather than
rehabilitation.
Like kind of like solitary confinement, where it's just like you in a cell, straitjacket, rest of your life.
I mean, sure. Like I'd like to think that that's fair, because it's like really that person losing their mentality and everything. How much different is that from them dying? You know what I mean? Like I think that's far worse to experience. Not that I can comment on that, but my perception of that would be a much shittier life. So and for the harm that they've imposed, I think that would be fair.
Okay, so let's keep nailing down what crimes we think warrant death penalty. So we said, for the most part, anything that happens to kids. I think everyone's kind of down for that. Sure. I mean, I think my threshold may be a little bit different from yours, but yeah, you do some shit to kids, fuck you. Anything else? Anything else we think warrants death penalty?
Do we agree all types of murder? So first, second.
I don't think all types.
I don't think all types of murder.
Yeah. Which ones would first? So pre-planned. What are your thoughts?
Even Go on, Lucas.
I was gonna say even pre-planned, because think about people who've been suffering from domestic abuse and have
Exactly.
pre-planned to, let's say, either escape their partner or whatever means necessary, and it happens to be that the second option is what they had to deal with. I don't think that's fair. I'm not saying that they're off the hook. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Like
so
you said.
So it's not murder specifically, first degree, that can be, but there's circumstances within that
like serial killing.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, if it's more than one instance, yes, 100%.
Yep, repeat offenders for sure.
Yeah, in a scenario like that, that would have to be. That's tough. I agree that there are some domestic scenarios that people just like, this is the only way out for me.
Yep. I agree.
And that would have to be, I think, a case by case, like is there room for rehabilitation or not?
Yeah, and that's the whole point of trials too, right? Is we get to actually dig that down case by case.
And that would be, to kind of veer off slightly here, that would be a piece of it I think would have to change, in the process. Is right now, or to my understanding, and the case is just the verdict of if they're guilty of it or not. But am I understanding it right that it's only the judge that realistically determines the penalty? Like, I think that's something that should be agreed on too.
So I like that you said that. Let's save that because I definitely want to touch on that in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're all on similar pages with murder and self-defense and domestic situations. What about rape?
I mean, I think in my defense, in the case that I've made about the sexual molestation of children, I think rape can have potentially similar impact to people's lives.
All kinds of rape?
What do you mean by that? Can you go more in detail on that?
Okay, so me personally, I wouldn't say, again, I just want to put this out there to be very clear, I don't support any of it, but I think violent and serial rape accounts or rapists, sure, they get the death penalty, but I think there is a lot of gray area and stuff too. For example, again, I know it's a shitty situation, I don't wish upon anyone, but there are times where there's miscommunication, and I'm not defending rapists, but
that's a good point, especially if you're talking about killing someone for it. That's a very fair point too.
Exactly. Like, for example, one of the things, I don't know if you guys heard about this, when Demi Lovato was talking about some story where she I don't think she had OD'd at the time, but she was getting drugs from a drug dealer, and she was like out of her fucking mind. And I think she ended up like hooking up with the drug dealer, and then now she's claiming it as some degree of rape because she feels as though he took advantage of her in a very vulnerable state. Whatever. I'm not here to be judge and jury to say whether that is or is not rape. But the only thing that I would look at is, okay, let's look at it from his perspective. Is if he's a drug dealer, or him just being a third party person, not knowing exactly what she's going through, like, how does he know that you're vulnerable and he is being a predator? Like, how does he know you're not just being flirty with it? And
what if, like, in the term vulnerable, like, is that emotionally, or is that like intoxicated beyond comprehension type thing? Like,
right. Yeah. And
that's,
again, I don't want to defend him, but my point is how does he know what's going on in your head? Like, how does he know, like, how is he not to believe, like, oh, Demi Lovato thinks I'm hot, like, sick, whatever. Like, and sure, whatever the outcome of that trial, if it ever goes to court, ends up being, so be it. But I'm just saying, do we want to kill this guy for that? I don't know. My point is, I don't know the degrees in the severity of the case. So in things like that, I might just be like, okay, yeah, maybe we'll go to jail for a little bit, depending on what his intentions were and stuff. But again, death, I don't know.
This will tie into kind of what we were going to talk about in the future. Is I don't know if we'd be very easily black or white to say this crime, and punishment is the death penalty. I think it would have to go through a more refined process.
Which is why 100%. It's such an expensive process.
Yep.
But then that's what I'm saying, is it have to be refined so that there's no room for like appeals. But then at the same token, then there would be no room for like wrongful conviction. Like, we can talk about that later, but yeah,
no,
that's why it's hard to. Yeah, because I think it'd be very hard to break down crime specifically, because there's so many circumstances that like very few cases are cookie cutter of the exact same type of crime with another group of people, right?
Can I just throw a number out there really quick?
Yep. Yeah.
Reports indicate over 150 innocent people have been found not guilty and exonerated since the death penalty was reinstated in 1973.
150.
150.
That's actually interesting. I found that since 2017, 159 that were on death row have been exonerated by DNA evidence. 159 in 4 years.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that's where it's like, there has to be a better process before
there has to be
more refined rules around when it's applicable.
Right.
Sorry, Lucas, you want to say something?
I was gonna say that's where it has to be no reasonable doubt, where what happened, they fessed up, they got cognac, whatever have you, to be everything's against you on this, and even they're like, yep, you got me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so before we go into how we would change policy and stuff, there are just 2 points that I want to touch upon real quick. One, Lucas, you were mentioning it again, how it's such an expensive process. We kind of went over the numbers already, how it's roughly 1.5 times more expensive to kill someone than it is to facilitate or carry through a life imprisonment sentence. Do you think that that's a factor? Do you think that it being more expensive to kill someone should be weighed at all?
I don't think so. In my opinion, it shouldn't really be about money ever, right? It's just,
but it will. But it always will be, because that's the way the world runs.
Well, to be honest, that was actually one of the factors of why it changed. It wasn't even just about morals. The reason why it changed is because we're putting so much money into death penalty system, where it's dude, these resources could be used elsewhere.
Sure.
Straight up, that was one of the biggest factors. In fact, the medication that's used for lethal injection was actually so scarce at one point that certain states had to change their method of death penalty to 1 firing squad and 2 electric chair.
Damn.
Which is dude, that's brutal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe we could touch upon that at the end, because I do think methods are very interesting. Is an interesting topic, but we could save that because that might be a fun. Well, that's so dark of me to say fun way to end the episode. I'm an asshole. Fuck it. Whatever.
Interesting way.
Interesting way. Yeah. Okay. Second question I want to touch on before we start to reanalyze the process. Okay, so we're all loosely in agreement that death penalty is all right in certain cases. In the cases where it is warranted, do you put that power in the government's hands?
Which power? Sorry, of completing the.
Maybe not completing,
which
but passing a sentence of determining when someone lives and when someone dies based on the crimes they committed.
No,
do you put that power into their hands?
No, that's where I think it should be. The jury that's deciding if they're guilty or not have to come into agreement about. The problem is, I could see why that would change how long it takes, because already determining if someone's guilty of a crime is already hard. But then determining, because then you're putting the onus of can those people live with the decision that they're now ending another life? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right now, if people are just because it's yeah, we agree this person's guilty, but now we're saying that they deserve to die, essentially. If you're voting yes, the death penalty is what they should get. I don't think it should be up to just the judge, though.
Right.
It's too much. It's too much. They can have a bias towards, they're not supposed to, but there may be circumstances where they do, and I don't think that much power should be in one person's.
Yep. Corruption's a real thing.
You then run into the same scenario of, giving too many people power, you never get anywhere in terms of a decision. So that's where it'd have to be more of a guideline of a checklist of is this applicable? Yes. Is this piece applicable? Yes. And from there, be able to determine, is the death penalty then a viable option or not?
Okay, so run me through your process from start to finish on how you think we make it a feasible option. What things do we need to change? What things do we keep the same to confidently say, yeah, we can implement the death penalty?
Yeah, so it'd have to start with, so the jury. For simplicity's sake, I'm gonna say that it's the jury that's determining the verdict of guilty or not guilty.
Sure.
They're the ones that are then voting on this decision. They would then have to, like I said, I don't know the specifics of what this checklist or these guidelines would entail, but it would be was a child involved, yes or no? Was there the taking of a life involved in this? Yes or no? And it would be like not like a scorecard, but like if you hit enough yeses, depending on all of this criteria, I should have like laid out more of this in my head in terms of like specifically what this checklist would have been.
Yeah.
But it would be like,
Only if you had a checklist.
no, right? Um, that's where it'd have to reach a certain criteria for them to be like, okay, like based on what we see here, we should have the death penalty as the punishment. And basically the other option would be either that or life imprisonment. It would be like those two options for the crimes that we're talking about.
Sure.
But it would be, I don't know. In terms of like criteria of the checklist, it would have to be, the impact, like the traumatic impact that this could have on the victim's life if they're still alive or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That would just be like a few of them, but you kind of get where I'm getting at, where how you'd have to refine that.
Yeah. Okay, Lucas, what thoughts do you have?
I think for me, one of the biggest points is there has to be a certain point where it stops in terms of retribution. Like for people who are seeking retribution, like when someone is a murderer and they finish off a bloodline, and that's the only thing that they've affected, I think that's where it's a big case for me of being like, who here is now seeking retribution for this? Because it's not affecting anyone directly anymore. They've taken the lives of who it's affected, no one else.
But what about the network of people connected to that?
You could say so.
No man is an island.
But yeah, we can always say that everything affects everyone.
Yeah.
At that point, I feel like if you're directly affecting people, that's the problem. And then once it like stops at that point because you've finished off everyone it affects directly, then sorry, like that's.
I don't think you ever could though with the way I guess we are now in society. It's everyone's too connected. Yeah.
So let me go back to then saying when you finish a bloodline, when you like where if a murderer was to take care of an entire family, like let's say that this kid scenario that I was reading out where the parents who had no other parents left of theirs, like descendants, and the one descendant they have of their own is who they tortured for days on end, and it was a kid. I was like, that's to me. They deserve death penalty.
So can I ask why does that matter to you? So for example, let's say that's the exact same scenario, but that kid had siblings or an aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
Why does that change whether or not the parents deserve the death penalty?
Because I think when they have someone else who's looking for justice, they have a chance of seeking retribution or justice. Where in this case, there's no one else seeking justice other than I mean,
but if
sure,
they're
lawyers and stuff like that, sure. But I mean, like no one else directly seeking justice for what had been done to like their family member.
But if they're not involved in the jury or the outcome of the trial, what does it matter?
Like what do you mean?
So I'm saying right now, I don't think the judge's decision, I don't think is impacted by the family in the sense of like whether there's family alive or not. They're not being persuaded. So I almost said he, but he or she, the judge, may not be influenced by. I don't think they're supposed to be influenced by the people impacted by it, but more so just the details of the crime. I get where you're coming from, though. It's like you don't want it to ever be subjective. Like the decision can't be subjective. It has to be objective based on
yes.
There can't be feelings tied to why you've chosen one or the other.
So that's where one of the reasons death penalty was. I don't want to say death penalty was implemented because it was implemented under some silly superstition back in the day. But one of the reasons why it was carried on too is that so that there was no sympathy for the person who caused these heinous crimes, because the longer they live and the longer they're able to talk about their story, the longer there's a sympathy factor. A good example is the Unabomber. Mm-hmm. He talks and talks, and eventually you start to sympathize with certain things he has. And then you start to downplay some of his things because you're like, well, I do agree with the reasons why, just not the things you have done. And then there's sympathy towards that person. But you have a good point there. I guess then for me, I'd change up a little bit what I was saying. I think it's also it has to do with how heinous this crime is, like how insane
Agreed.
the crime had to be. I think that's
For
something
sure.
that sticks out to me is that it had to do with how heinous the crime was and how it finished a bloodline where I was like, that's insane.
Yeah, that family line will never go on anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Lee?
No, I want to go back to one of your points there, Matt, where you're saying that the judge's final verdict shouldn't be influenced by emotion or sympathy, or it should be unbiased. I see what you're saying, and I agree with it. But at the same time, don't you think it is almost entirely based on emotion? Otherwise, the importance of it involving a child or not would be irrelevant, right? Because when something horrible happens to a child, it's entirely emotional. Always being like, "Why the fuck would you do that to a kid?
Oh, to a
Fuck,
kid.
kill him."
Yeah, and that's where it's like, I mean, I guess when I say emotional, I think I'm more referring to like emotional connection or connection to those involved than it is
Like a personal bond with those people.
correct. Yeah,
I see.
like
Okay.
that are related, like stuff like that that would have exterior motivation for why they're choosing what they're choosing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, because right now that is the case, right? Like a lot of these are driven, and that's why I think if you're considering that, like, there needs to be some objective reference, because the same crime somewhere, depending on the judge, could get a different sentence than the same crime somewhere else, right? Like if it's based on one person's, if it's a judge, if it's a different judge, one crime, they may interpret aspects or details of that crime differently than a different judge may.
Yeah, that's fair.
And what brings up a point there, everyone has certain things that will affect them immensely. Because everyone has different experiences that have gotten you to where you are now.
For sure.
That different things may trigger you in a different way.
For sure.
Which is why, this process would have to move to something that's more objective than it is subjective.
So here's the way I would change things if I could, to eliminate doubt, to eliminate potential for biases, potential for corruption. Tell me what you think. Okay, so first things first is I think there should be 2 trials. I think the first trial should be to determine whether the suspect or the defendant is guilty or not. So let's assume we've determined he's guilty. We then move into first things first. So take it back a bit. Even in the first trial, I think almost in all trials, there should be 3 judges. I think there should be 3 judges because I think one judge, there's too much bias there, and he calls too many shots. So I think there should be
he or she.
Sorry, you're right. That judge calls too many shots. Could be Judge Judy. You never know.
It's true.
So I think 3 judges. I think the judges should be announced day of the trial. So there's obviously no potential for bribery or anything like that. Or they do a last minute switch, whatever it may be. 3 judges, trial. We've now determined he's guilty. Now we have a second trial where the judges from the first one have determined, okay, he is eligible. Okay, eligible is maybe a bad word, but the potential punishments for him are life in prison or the death penalty. Second trial goes through and it's determined by the jury again, based on what options are put out there. Then once they've determined, okay, yes, this guy gets the death penalty. Throwing an arbitrary number out there, let's say they have 3 years. They have 3 years for the defendant to appeal the case at all. And then there is a second sector, or a completely separate sector, that deals entirely with death penalty appeals. So that way, there have been a bunch of cases and scenarios where people have been appealing their death sentence, and the whole system's so backlogged that by the time they get reviewed, their death sentence has already been carried out and they've been killed. So we don't actually know. So there is room for doubt there.
And that's where it's like interesting, like, because if you went your route, what would be the reason you'd allow appeals if it's some that many? Because collected, like, I could see now why appeals are allowed because it's one judge that's making this. We're now in your proposed system, it's 3 judges who've agreed that this is potential, and then another group of 12 individuals who have agreed to this.
Yeah.
Like, I would then say
saying.
You should never then have an appeal option.
Well, I still think that there's potential that maybe certain evidence was never brought to the table. because I agree with you. Anything that is brought to the table and anything that is acknowledged, I think the 12 is it 12 or is it 13 people in the jury?
He's 12.
I thought they had to break a tie, so it would have to be an odd number. Am I wrong?
No, because if you can't, if it's not majority, it's then you're not past the doubt. Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so 12.
And it has to actually be like everyone is on, like if it's 11 and no and one says, if 11 are yes and one says no, then they haven't come to a decision.
Yeah, and that's how I think it should be with the death penalty for sure. If there's one no, okay, they get life in prison. That's fine. The only reason why I would allow appeals in this case for a certain amount of time and why it needs to be dealt with in a speedy, dealt with haste, is again, if certain evidence is not put forward in the original trial, I think that's fair.
I think this boils down to then refining the process at an even earlier stage in terms of like, because there are scenarios where like exactly that, like processes from a police perspective were not followed properly, so evidence was missed. Like that needs to be refined. Like ultimately in a utopian world, the when the police do their process, like there's nothing that they could have missed,
right? But
or no details.
Ultimately, we know mistakes are going to be made. We're all human.
Correct. Yeah.
So would you be all right with the safety net of, okay, you get an appeal for, again, arbitrary number, 3 years before your death sentence gets carried out, or from the time of your trial you have to appeal this?
I'm gonna say no, because I'd like to know the numbers on, the ones that were overturned. If the technology that we have now and the processes that are supposed to be followed were followed, like how many of those would have been, or the ones that I guess that are out there, how many of them would have been impacted or not? Because then it's true. Like
it was a completely different time.
If the process is right, then I don't think there would be a reason to appeal it.
Sure, that's your point. That's fair. Now, what do you think of like secondary benefits to capital punishment? Something that people say is, hold on, this sounds like a good comment. So Emma's in our chat and she's saying, if someone is truly guilty, there is no way their appeal will get approved no matter how many times they file. But if they did slip through and they're innocent and they deserve the chance. That's ultimately my point there.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, I guess I'm trying to get is like, if the process was the way we envisioned it, the trial would dictate that like there wouldn't be a chance to. But I that's very like utopian thinking, that it's like
exactly which we can almost never act on.
Yeah. That's. I mean, look at it now. Like, there's still scenarios where the wrong decisions or the wrong verdict had come out. So.
Yep. So what I was gonna say is secondary benefits of capital punishment. What are your thoughts on things? For example, using it as a bargain chip. For example, let's say you're dealing with gang violence or something like that. We get plea bargains nowadays, but let's say you're now, on the block for the death penalty. The odds of someone cooperating to get that to reduce to life in prison seems like it would be a lot higher. Do you agree?
I'm going to say no, because there was actually, so when Canada looked at removing and abolishing the death penalty, the homicide rate was already on the decline, but it's not like them stating that it didn't reflect being a deterrent for homicide.
But that was a premature deterrent. Like, that was like, you put it out there to deter it from happening. But he's asking, like, if it had already happened and now used as a bargaining chip to be like, you're about to die,
cooperate,
because you've already done the act. So rather than deterrence, now we're acting as if, to help, I guess, get evidence and stuff. I would say it's a good bargaining chip. But the only thing is that if someone doesn't comply, then you ultimately have to put them on that death penalty, which means that now you're playing with that.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to be clear also. I know that is a weak argument to validate killing people. We could bargain better. I understand. That's a weak argument. But to be fair, it is a beneficial secondary effect.
And that's where I think that would reflect negatively if we're willing to say, you can tell us that, and we're not going to kill you. Then how is that like? Then it kind of, I think,
why is it really
breaks the foundation for everything else. If you're like, okay, we'll make an exception because this guy's willing to confess.
I'm not gonna lie though.
That's interesting.
I think that's fucked up.
And I have to admit, I don't think it'll deter for the reason of they've done that to James Bond almost every movie, and he hasn't given up the evidence.
It's true. That's a good point.
It's either give up the evidence or fall into his tank of sharks, and he escapes, right? So.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Now criminals are just gonna watch the James Bond movies and think they're okay.
They're gonna know what to do.
You're fucked.
Yeah, like I just think that would look very scummy on like
that's fair.
The government's process where it's like you can't have it black or white and then just say, oh, but if you tell us, like we can go back on our word.
Especially if you're arguing from the point of protecting the value of life. And that life means so much that when you take life, we take life. Psych, he's gonna tell me some juicy gossip. So we'll let him walk. You're right.
That's why I don't think you could make the argument.
Sure. Okay, so let's go to the deterrent factor that you just spit out there. Yeah, it hasn't been proven to be much of a deterrent. But do you think most of that is because the crimes that currently warrant the death penalty? It's like serial killers, like these very heinous crimes that we've mentioned before, and the people most prone to doing that stuff don't have the awareness to even consider that death is an option or to even care that death is an option.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? So it was never a deterrent for them anyways, but it could be a deterrent for the lower crimes and the more sane criminals who are like...
Where we don't even want to use it in the first place.
Right, it's true. It's true. But I mean, there are the rare cases where someone who wants to kill somebody is in, the right state of mind and says, "Fuck." Can't do it.
Let me use an example from here. This is actually relatively recent. An NFL player for the I think Las Vegas Raiders. Kid was like 23, maybe younger, 21, playing in the NFL. Got drunk one night after a game. This happened, no joke, like 3 weeks ago. Drunk driving, killed a mom and a kid in a car accident. Would that be a crime that you could say the death penalty would be eligible for?
I don't think so. I think because...
I kind of say yeah.
Because then that would be a deterrent for, like, I think...
Drunk driving.
Exactly. Like, the risk that... But again, at the same token, to kind of dovetail off the other point where it's like, they would never think of that as a deterrent. Like, if someone's gonna get drunk and drive, like I don't think they're assuming that that's gonna happen. Like no one's gonna get into a car drunk driving and be like, I'm gonna crash on my way.
It's true. Everyone,
no one's gonna think like that anyway. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe though that's the case where it's like, even now though, like the life imprisonment, can be, I think something that comes out of that in terms of whatever the crime that you're charged with. And Minimac just said no because you can't prove that intended to cause death. Oh, that's an interesting point from from a trial perspective.
But you also assume it would be manslaughter. It would obviously be manslaughter, but
yeah, because and that's where it's like, would this be one of those scenarios where it could be a viable penalty for?
It's tricky. I think that was.
I think I'd like to think so because that situation could have been avoided. Like there are scenarios that are accidents. Like there are obviously very tragic car accidents.
Sure.
There was a factor involved that someone had control over in some way or another.
Yeah, and the weird part about that too is like, again, if we're looking at it from a deterrent perspective of saying the death penalty will deter people from drinking and driving, maybe it would, but I think it's just kind of sad that the idea of I could potentially kill someone if I go driving now that I'm drunk
is not enough.
Should be enough of a deterrent.
Right.
Yeah, that's also very sad.
So, not to downplay that, but would you think it would be worse? So, let's say in this scenario, was it a four-way stop sign? Guy runs a four-way stop, kills that family. Wouldn't you say it's worse if he did that while sober? Because he had full control and he did that? Because when there's alcohol involved, you can say, well, he was impaired, he wasn't in his right mind. There was something stopping him. But if you were sober and you did that, you were just straight up negligent. Negligent either way. But
yeah,
that's a good point.
You're mentally stable enough where you could have stopped. Where when you're drunk, you could have been like, I was too impaired to even see the sign. Or in this case, you straight up ran and T-boned a family.
Yeah, well, I think both scenarios are obviously accidents. Nothing was ever intended.
Right.
But not at least, but in the case of the drunk driver, he's making
like
that conscious decision to get behind the wheel, knowing damn well he shouldn't. Whereas the other person, I mean, we drive every damn day of our lives. Well, not every our lives, but
it's like a freak accident in comparison to like something that there was a little more. There were actions that someone had control over that had more of an impact on.
Like he put himself in a vulnerable scenario, in a scenario where he was putting other people at risk intentionally, where the other
and he's
sober
willing
driver.
to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Just freak accident. Yeah. Mini Mac brought up some great, interesting points here. Biggest problem with our Canadian system, in my opinion, is that the system's too weak. For example, for federal charges, my understanding is they only need to serve 30% of their sentence, and then they can be eligible. Yeah, she said Muzzo, who 3 years of his 10-year sentence. The fact that he only got 10 years for 4 people dying, I think is insane. A little insane. But so he only did 3 years and now gets to walk free. That's really fucked up. Yeah, I think our system is very weak on that.
Yeah, I think
Emma. Sorry, and then Emma said drunk driving is horrible, but I don't think it warrants the death penalty. And to kind of dovetail off that, Minimax said I think they should increase the punishment for those drunk driving, or even better, make a zero tolerance.
Now, someone can correct me on this, but the only reason why I would say zero tolerance isn't the blood alcohol being zero isn't viable. And again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure mouthwash will have you blowing at a certain percentage below the legal limit. But I'm pretty sure mouthwash.
Mouthwash doesn't have alcohol. It's not alcohol based anymore.
Some are.
Is it
some
not?
are.
I think
I think like. You cannot find one in the grocery store that is anymore. I tried looking for one.
Have you been looking?
Yeah, this guy's trying. It's cheaper than LCBO, man.
No, but
like,
I think $4
or $5 a bottle.
I think zero tolerance isn't fair because there's a certain point where you are impaired, and it's very difficult to also speak on that because there's a lot of factors that take in your alcohol level, like your BMI, your tolerance, like how often you are as a drinker. Obviously, if it's your first time drinking and you're super skinny, you take a shot, and you haven't eaten that day, yeah. You're fucked.
Well, I don't think first time drinking is really a factor because your blood alcohol is the same. It's just how you feel. The tolerance.
That's fair. So let's say you're someone who is on an empty stomach, hasn't eaten 2 days, then you take a shot. Like blood alcohol should play a huge factor.
You say you haven't eaten in 2 days?
I was gonna say, and your first thing was a shot. Like you've got other problems, bro. Like, you need to figure your shit out. Have you done this? You've done this.
No, but like in comparison to someone who's just recently eaten. Yeah. Bigger guy, so let's say I would be double the size of this individual who is obviously very hungry and I'm not, and I take a shot. Like I'm obviously good. I wouldn't drive right away, but like I would be fair to drive. Like I wouldn't be impaired, where it's putting anyone at risk. So
yeah,
I wouldn't say it's a zero tolerance. I think that's kind of unfair. I don't want to say it's unfair. Like obviously you're making that conscious decision to drive, but.
Yeah, like I think there needs to be technology associated with being able to test your. I need to roll out the app that I was talking about when we did our invention.
Yes, yeah. You haven't started,
but it's like the concept of because like I could have a beer or a glass of wine and be like 100% fine to drive home with no issues, but
absolutely
that same token like. Maybe one day it hits me harder or faster. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be a way that we could implement a way to test your impairment.
Yeah,
breathalyzer.
You get in at a legal, like from a legal perspective, not like I feel fine to drive.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Based on your own.
Yeah, but that's what a breathalyzer's for. You can get one built into your car.
But that's what I'm saying is like you could blow under, but be way too drunk to drive. Yeah. Realistically, right?
Impaired, yeah. Because technically you're not drunk, but you're. Motor skills are impaired. Yeah,
that's fair.
So
that's a real possibility.
So to kind of go back to the original point, like, what was even the original point? I kind of went off. It related to me saying that the drunk driving guy, that one scenario would it be applicable to the death penalty? But I don't remember what the point actually was that you had made.
I don't know which. I think you were talking about.
You're asking if it would be the death penalty on behalf of that.
Yeah, but it was related to something Lee was saying.
Not about me appealing cases if there was potential for innocence.
No, it was after that. No, it's not a biggie, but But I guess that would be another one. Would negligence in an aspect like that?
Oh, sorry, that's right. We were talking about deterrence. We were talking about.
Oh yeah. Good call. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think it would be effective in a deterrent or even as a, like we had said earlier, a bargaining chip.
Yeah, again, yeah, I'm with you on the bargaining chip thing. I think again, deterrent. I think it's because, and I support it.
There's bigger issues if we're having to use that as a deterrent.
Yes.
Like for the people that are committing these crimes, like what they're willing to do, I don't think them being concerned about being. I assume people in these like the serial killers, like I assume they don't think they're gonna get caught, otherwise they're not gonna keep doing it. Right?
That's
like,
one of them. Yeah. And then again, the others, they're just not aware enough to even consider death being an option.
Or they don't give a fuck.
I wonder how much of it changes. Like I said, like there's definitely a sane group of people who are committing homicide and stuff. Let's use gang violence as one of them. Like, do we think it would deter gang violence at all?
No, because
maybe
I think
not
the people,
because of that whole no snitch code kind of thing. So they think
and even and even in that, it's like if you're willing, like if you're going and committing acts like that, like you've got to think like these are people who are. The attitude is like you're just trying to survive. Like if you don't kill these people, you're gonna die. So it's like I don't know if it would even act then as a deterrent in that perspective.
Fair.
So
not that I can comment that I know what that, obviously I'm not trying to speak on that. That's how they feel, but that's how my interpretation of what that would be like.
To put a con, actually, so one of the cons that I was reading where I was like, I totally understand this, and one of actually the big deterrents is for most crimes was actually reverse, which was not giving death penalty, but like in a way of without the death penalty, with removing it, it helped a lot with us discovering what had caused these things, because then those people are incarcerated and you keep doing studies with them. So people have done behavioral studies. You start seeing what develops this behavior, how it starts, the onsets and stuff. So you get to see, okay, well, this person telling me about their life, it seems consistent with these few people. Then they start studying other people who are like, let's say in like juvenile people who are killing animals early. Like, oh, that's a sign that they're starting off on the path. So, I mean, I do also agree with death penalty. Also, not doing like helping us as a society understanding of
like
why
move
things
forward.
are happening. Obviously, there's going to be things where some people are just sporadic. Like, you can't predict all these things and prevent all these things. It's impossible.
So do you not think though that, for example, the studies and what we can learn from these serial killers and stuff could still be done even though they're on death row? Because like for the most part, they're not getting their death sentence is like years away.
A lot of Ted Bundy conversations happened while he was on death row.
While he's on,
Right.
He confessed to a lot more details of his crimes on death row.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like the day before he died, he tried to buy himself more time by saying like, "I'll tell you more details," and they're just like, "You've done this before." Like, no, sorry.
Same with Richard Ramirez, right? A lot of his interviews were done while he was on death row.
Yeah, Mindhunter covers this very well, where they talk to. I don't think not all of them are on death row, but to your point, yeah, they build a lot of this, fact finding about the psychology behind it. But yeah, and that's the other thing is like moving to the process we had. Would it be like death row is much shorter of a time frame? Like if you're put on death row, like it's like next week. I don't think they should know. By the way, I think it should be where they don't know what day it is that it's happening.
That's interesting. That's an interesting.
But can that make people more manic already in incarceration?
So to spin it in a way, like especially with people who've murdered, the people they murdered didn't get to know that it was their last day. Like, why do you get that privilege? I like that. I like that psychological twist. I'm a fan. Okay. One of the reasonings behind it that I thought was interesting. It was Japan's reasoning. Maybe Lucas, you saw it too.
It's like the karma base.
Yeah. So I mean, like we're all pretty used to the phrase that like good things happen to good people, and there's no real way for our government and society to enforce that at all times. That all good deeds get good rewards. But what you can do is enforce the opposite. So basically, what Japan is saying is bad things happen to bad people. So it reinforces the opposite as well, that good things happen to good people. But more importantly, if you're bad, you will get punished. Whether you believe it or not, I at least thought that was interesting. An interesting way to approach defending it.
Another interesting way to think about it, though, or interesting concept around it is typically, with I feel like in most scenarios, the death penalty is the punishment for crimes of murder where life's taken. Yeah. But it's the only really, not even just violent, but any crime in general that the punishment is what's occurred. Where it's like,
Yeah.
Someone who's guilty of rape isn't then raped, which is in my opinion like very interesting. That's how we've like when someone steals money, like it's not like they're like, okay, now we're gonna take money from you, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting that it's like equal to the harm inflicted is what's done onto you, similar to bad things happen to bad people, but it seems like with murder is the only one where it's the only thing that is actually what's happened is done back.
Is the only one that's really eye for an eye, right?
Yeah.
That's fair.
But there are some instances like we're talking about where like a rapist, if it was a serial rapist, like that should be
fuck them up.
Yeah, like I'm not opposed to. Definitely.
I was gonna say, would you vouch for that? Would you prefer it if whatever you have done it gets reflected back onto you?
It would be both. It would just. I got like a dry throat. Excuse me. Yeah, I almost died.
You good?
That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, just take a sip of.
Gotta wash it down. No, but maybe they should get raped first, and then the serial rapist. Then.
So who's gonna do that?
Well, the rumors that it happens in prison anyway, so it's gonna happen.
That's what a little bit of a tangent. One of the things that I can appreciate about some, which again I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but there's this unwritten code amongst criminals that I absolutely support. Is that in prisons they do not like people who did shit to kids, or
even people who've abused women. Like it's treated not to the same extent, but viewed in a similar light.
Yeah. Which I think is crazy. Like there'll be guys in there who have strangled a man to death with his bare hands, and another guy who comes in who killed a kid. That guy who's killed another man says, "You're fucked up. Fuck you." I support that. I love it. Like there was this one story where this guy, I mean, so sad and tragic. I forget the exact details, but like he raped his 3-year-old son.
Jesus Christ.
I think he killed him. I don't know what happened after that, but he went to jail, and then
they killed him in jail.
They didn't even kill him, but a gang of 20 guys took turns raping him, just to say, "Fuck you! You don't do that to a 3-year-old boy."
Yeah,
and as horrific as everything is, part of me is like, "Hey guys, I like the enforcers in prison. Like, good for you guys." That,
because
there's a code.
I think it blurs the aspect that like everyone in prison, they don't have morals, because like some of these people, like even these cold-blooded killers, like if they were part of like the mob, let's say they killed people, they did what they thought they had to do, but it doesn't mean they don't have a moral compass in the sense of like of other aspects of life. You know what I mean? Like they can still cherish certain values, and then there are like people like that who it just seems like they don't have a moral compass at all. They're genuinely horrific people that they get what that's
so
take is they get what's coming.
A hypothetical I want to ask you guys, you guys familiar with the Paul Bernardo case?
No.
Yes, not all of the nitty-gritty, but
we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty, but essentially Paul Bernardo and his wife Carla Homolka, what they did is they kidnapped, tortured, raped, and killed several women. Like they were serial rapists and murderers. Okay. And Carla Homolka would like lure them in and film it and stuff, and a lot of fucked up shit they did. Probably the most notorious serial killer in Canadian history anyways. Paul Bernardo. So again, just to summarize everything I know we've been talking about for like an hour and a half now, but we all agree. Okay, let's get into specific. Would we all agree that crimes like that, Paul Bernardo, should be sentenced to death?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucas?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Now, let's say, so we all support that. Let's say, hypothetically, and knock on wood, this never happens to any of us, but let's say your kid does something along the lines of what Paul Bernardo did. Do you think you'd have the ability to be as objective to sit back and say, yeah, my kid deserves the death penalty? Whether or not you sentence them yourself or not, but like, would you be able to step back and say, they deserve this?
I couldn't give you a true answer because I don't have. I'm not in that scenario.
Of course.
Right now, I would like to say yes because justice needs to be done. But realistically, when that's my kid, and now we're like in court, I'd be like, that's my kid. My kid would never. Like, you'd be in so much denial.
There's so much denial. Yeah, if you've
it
seen,
would be insanely difficult to like
grasp that.
Really absorb that, like even that whole concept of like how what did I do? How did I fail in a way that made you capable of this? Like I think that would Yeah,
it's almost inevitable for you to wear a bit of that yourself, right?
Oh,
As the
100%.
parent, for sure. The reason I ask that is because I think it's important to take into consideration the wishes of the victim. Maybe not so much the victim's family. Like, sure, I'd still hear him out, but I think almost like an organ donor card, people not should because we're living in it'd be such a pessimistic way of living. But if there was a way to know that if someone gets murdered, for example, like let's say I wrote a will type thing that says if I get murdered, I do not want that guy to fry because I'm a bigger, better man. Like I think that should at least be considered in the hearing. Or I say fuck that guy, kill him. On the same on the flip
No,
side of the
I
coin,
don't
I
think
think
you
it's
can.
important. You know, again, I don't think it should decide anything, but you don't think it should be.
No, because then you're moving the objectivity out of it.
But I'm just saying, it's like, okay, so let's say, and you're right, I see what you're saying. But if, again, I were murdered, knock on wood, hope to God it never happens, and I choose to be a bigger man and say, don't kill this guy. All life is sacred. Taking his life doesn't give my life back. You don't think it's all, again, I don't think it determines the decision, but you don't think it's important for the government to at least say, respect the wishes of the dead, or like let it move a little bit?
Hypothetically, what if like it was one of your family members who accidentally killed you, like manslaughter, like they just happened to be backing up their car, impelled you to your car, you died.
Yeah, like, I don't think manslaughter.
My wishes is I'm gone.
I don't think manslaughter would count for
for
death penalty, obviously.
So this would tie back to I was gonna make I think a great point about this that related to something we had talked about in the past. But yeah, no, I don't think you could. I don't, and it's actually very moving. Like I've seen like clips of someone's kid was like in a gang and they killed another boy and the boy's mom was there and was like, I forgive you. Like it was moving.
That's insane.
How
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, like the power that you have that she must have to understand. Like
that shit's incredible.
Yeah, very, very. And that's where it's like, yeah, like she's trying to give him another chance, but it's like this is where I think though it would tie into with a jury is deciding this. Like I don't think the fate what you think should be the fate should be taken into account
at all.
No, because it's not because in the present day process maybe, but if you're in a process where people are collectively coming together to decide, I don't know. I don't think what you want or what your family would want should ever be taken. Would then be taken into consideration.
That's
because then you open it up for too much gray area. Not that there shouldn't be, but in the sake of this conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean we got a couple minutes left, and I definitely want to talk about it. What do you guys think of as method of the death penalty?
Yeah, I think that the I mean, I don't know if this would save more money. I think just a quick cock of the gun, shot in one shot to the head kind of thing I think would be a more economic approach.
Economical for sure.
And I was reading about like how many there was like 4.5% between 1977 and 2001 where the executions involved like unanticipated problems or delays, which caused like quote unquote unnecessary agony for the person. Like this person's dying anyway, so it's like, what do we care? But it's like when you're going through like lethal injections and stuff, like I don't know. I just think gun quick one, But then the other part is the social or the complexity around someone psychologically has to fucking do this. You know what I mean? Like someone, unless you have like an automated machine that's shooting the gun, but it's like someone's job. Like that would also could play a psychological toll on.
I mean, that's also why I thought the idea of the firing squad was interesting, is because there's several people firing, so not one person wears the guilt of having to kill somebody, which is neat. But at the same time, I think there's too much mercy in a bullet.
It's too fast.
Way too fast.
That's
way
fair.
too fast and way too painless. Like it's in a split second.
If you shot them in all of their like tendons and stuff
that's
first,
fucked. Yeah, that's more expensive then. You just use a cleaver.
I have two. So if it's like a really heinous crime, like let's say against children, the worst of the worst. Stray jacket, throw them out on airplane. Onto solid ground.
Wow. That's
bad. Okay.
Second one, I'm bring back the guillotine, baby.
The guillotine was hype.
What about is it slow? It's like it's got like ball bearing.
Oh, that's fucking brutal.
But to your point, like I don't. That's a great point.
No,
it
I
shouldn't
agree.
be for these heinous crimes. Yeah, like serial killers. Like it shouldn't be slow.
I mean, again, I've admitted to me being an asshole before. I don't care what happens to them. Like as far as like the humanitarian way goes, and like it's got to be humane. I don't care about that. If it's a steamroller going an inch an hour, fucking light them up. I don't care. But I do. That was fucked. That was fucked.
I've seen that on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It just makes his eyes like.
Yeah, it increases their vision. Shit. I know, but I do have a problem with being too quick. It being too slow, take your fucking time, baby. Let's go. But yeah,
what's your take on? Let's say it was the firing squad to eliminate them. You could volunteer to be part of that if you were like if it was like a friend of yours, like they would have. You know what I mean? So that if people wanted to exact their revenge, if they thought it would help them, like, would you be open
to if the victim was a friend of mine?
Yeah.
I thought you meant the criminal. I the criminal. Like, what? So I gotta shoot you, bro? What?
No. Like, you're a friend of the victim, because then that might bring out the whole that's your revenge. You know, like people want it because they want to, but if it's you doing it, because then it might inflict the whole thing, like them coming to the realization, like I can't do this. Yeah, but then it's like, like if you don't do it, someone else is gonna do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's
or would it more be it's like jury duty, where instead of jury duty you get executioner duty? You're like, oh man, like, this guy got to.
Yeah, that would be a fucked up society if that was the thing. That's fucked up.
Yeah. But you know what's even more fucked up of a concept to think that's kind of like what conscription was in like the 40s, when it's like you had to go to war, you didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
For 18 above, it was kind of the same kind of thing, like
basically the same thing.
You gotta go and pull the trigger on some people. Like that's basically a core concept. What happened.
War is fucked up, man. War is fucked up.
It is.
I don't know if you guys ever saw this or not, but I saw this real quick before we go. Yeah, because it's about time. I saw there's like this animation proposal for a death sentence machine that, as opposed to a lethal injection or firing squad. It was crazy. I'll try and find it. Maybe I'll post it on our Instagram because it's funny as fuck. But it's this really shitty like AutoCAD rendition where you see the criminal, he's sitting in the chair, and there's this big ass machine behind him that has like a hand, like a claw, like one of those machines that we like grab the table and shit. So the claw comes, it reaches over, it grabs his head, and it rips his head off. It like twists his head and rips his head off in like one motion. And they're like, yeah, this will be better. And I was like, what the fuck was? And the funny part is the model of the guy who's getting his head ripped off is like has a smiley face and everything. Like he's like a shitty Sims character, just like da-da-da, sitting here, head gets twisted right off his fucking body. It's insane.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy. Emma made a point here. It's if it isn't a humane way, you're adding unnecessary trauma to someone whose job it is to follow through on pulling the trigger or injecting the needle. That's why, it would have to be something that's like automated. You know, we're in a time now where a lot of stuff's being automated, so maybe one day these will be. It's dangerously close to vigilante vengeance. That's correct. Vigilant. Yeah.
I think one of the best ways to do it is, let's say, for the executioners, there's a wall with like 5 or 6 guns in the wall. You can't see what's on the other side of the wall, and you don't know which room the guy's in. So 6 people go up to their guns, pull the trigger. They have no idea if they shot a blank wall or the person, and they walk away. Dead body gets carried out.
What about, so just before we go here, I was reading that, and I don't know how recent this was on my, the best site for reference is Wikipedia, but they were saying that Iran and Saudi Arabia apparently are still countries that employ slow hanging and stoning. And I was like, I don't know how recent that was, but like stoning someone to death, like
it's fucked, isn't it?
Shit, that is really fucked up.
That's fucked. What okay, I know we're out of time. Fuck it. But real quick, what they used to do, it wasn't necessarily a death sentence, but it was just a form of torture to the indigenous people in Canada, is the colonists would bury them up to their necks, cover their head in like honey or something, and just release like bullet ants. to just fuck them up.
That is fucked up. Yeah, like there's an extent where
Or just leave them exposed too. That would also
for sure versus like you're gonna die, but it's like, is it too much? And that's where it's like, depending on how heinous the crime, they might deserve it.
Light them up. Light them up.
Yeah. We'll have to probably save that for another episode because we're done here.
Yes. What are you guys thankful for?
Yeah, what are you thankful for? Lucas.
It's a hard thing to follow up on. I went first last time. You guys can figure it out. I'll go last.
Sticking with the theme, I'm thankful for all the people I know who have endured some crazy shit in their life and only made them bigger, better people. Kudos to those guys.
Oh, that's a really good one. Can I say I'm also thankful for those kind of people?
No.
Sure. I think they deserve it. I think they deserve that too, especially after kind of the episode we have. Yeah. People who've experienced trauma in their lives and have lived through that too, and are still here, pushing through. And have become better people.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for forensics upgrading as time has gone on, where we've been able to free people who are actually innocent.
Yep.
And imprison people who are actually guilty. So.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Because Joey, I watched Forensic Files, and they've caught people decades after. So.
Dude, the most recent one of the big ones of that was the Golden State Killer.
Yes.
Yes. I read the book. Book was insane. So good. I loved it. He was found guilty like 2 years ago because of Ancestry.com.
Insane.
Or my what is that? 21
20,
DNA or DNA in me?
23 and me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like So he was found.
This guy's gonna say Forever 21. Old Navy, The Gap. Fuck off.
Forever 21 DNA. But yeah, like stuff like that. Found him 50 years after everything had happened. Crazy shit.
Anyways, guys, this was not a lighthearted episode like we usually do, but thanks for sticking it out and listening to us pretend like we're smart.
Yep.
I'm also grateful for transportation, everyone. Have a good night.